Hey, welcome to this episode of the Ministry Show. Today we're going to be talking about trust and how it really works. And I know, Chris, you have so much to give today, and I'm so excited to just engage and talk and share.
Yeah, so here we go. I think both secular psychologists and people in the ministry, anybody around relational development would conclude or say or teach or train that trust is the foundation of all healthy relationships. And so since ministry is so relationally oriented, trust is really also the foundation of every healthy ministry. And early on in my career as a pastor, I found that the understanding of trust, at least in our world, it is not real super accurate. And I can remember even reading books and talking with pastors and other church leaders on this idea that it's our responsibility as leaders to create trust. But the more I tried to create trust, the less trust I had. And the only way I can explain it is, and you've probably had situations like this where you can tell that somebody's trying to get you to trust them. And so what happens in your mind and in your heart?
Yeah, you're a suspect. I don't know if I trust. What's your motive?
Yeah, what's your motive?
Yes.
All of a sudden, all these questions come up.
Yes.
And actually, you tend to push back when somebody is trying to get you to trust them, so to speak. And so in ministry, it's very detrimental, I've found, if we try to create that trust. I've found that trust is actually a byproduct, so it cannot be created. In other words, it's not up to me to create trust. It's up to the other person to grant me any amount of trust that they're going to give me anyway. So I cannot create that like in you, Pam, or others. It's impossible.
Right.
So what do you think about that thought?
It makes me think of something my mom taught me when I was a little kid. She said, Pam, if someone tells you a secret, don't you ever repeat it, because that trust will be broken. You'll never get it back. I remember that as a little kid, her telling me that. And then she told me, you become like a vault. And she explained, and, just that little terminology, I could understand what that meant. And it allowed me to develop relationships even into high school where everyone came to me with their problems.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't going to share it with our friends. That's how you build trust. It's your track record, I think.
Yeah, one way to build trust is to hold a confidence, for sure.
Yes.
And we all know that trust takes a long time to garner, but it can be eradicated in a moment.
Yes.
And so I want to walk through in the show today how trust really works, and to help our listeners understand that, focus on it, and then hopefully the idea here would be to give you freedom to be who you are and not have to worry about building or creating or erecting some kind of trust. It's a house of cards anyway. And the foundational element here is that trust is a byproduct, and that's why it can't be created. It can be eliminated, but it can't be created, or at least you can't create it. Could I just walk through that continuum? I'll do it in a backwards way.
Yeah. Love to
Okay,
hear
so
it.
let's do that. I've already said that trust is a byproduct, so the natural question is, it's a byproduct of what? Trust is a byproduct of confidence. In other words, Pam, you're not going to trust anybody that you don't first have confidence in. It's impossible for the human condition to be able to do that. Now, even then, even when you have supreme confidence in somebody, there's still a gap to go from confidence and trust, because trust does require a step or a leap of faith. It's of my own volition that I give emotional trust, that I trust your word, that I actually put my trust in you. But if you're not confident in somebody or something, then you will not trust them. One metaphor I like to use is, of all the cars I've ever bought, I've bought more Volvos than any other car, because they're so trustworthy.
Right.
And
Yes.
So, and we all have products like that, but we all need people like that we can put our trust in, but we also need to be that person where people can trust us as a ministry leader. So the problem is, in the continuum of this, is that confidence is also a byproduct. So we can't just create confidence. It's a byproduct of predictability. And so when someone or something is predictable, confidence is the natural next outcome. Now, how predictable you need to be depends upon the person that is granting the trust. I have had people that I feel like I've been very consistent with over time, always followed through, always showed up on time and all that, and they still didn't have confidence in me. So there are some people that, might take it to an extreme. But in general, if somebody can predict my actions, my attitude, or my behaviors, they will have confidence in me.
So true.
Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Pam,
Yes.
have you ever worked for a moody boss?
Yes.
You have.
Didn't
And
like
how
it.
did you like your job?
I hated it.
You hated your job.
Yes.
Maybe not the task part of your job,
Right.
but when you work with somebody that's unpredictable, you hate your job.
Right.
Nobody likes that job because, you could ask the very same question on day 1 and day 2 and get completely different responses.
So frustrating.
And because you can't predict, it creates tension at a very high level. I remember working for somebody that it was like, I knew the proposal that I wanted to make. I had it all prepared. I'm ready to go. And it's like, I have to wait for the right mood to get a yes. And
That's
so I've done that.
frustrating.
And maybe you out there listening, you're either in that situation or have been. The continuum, though, to advance on here is that predictability is a byproduct of consistency. And so when we act in a consistent manner, our decisions are in a consistent manner, then people can predict what our outcome would be even before the situation happens. Are you a person or are you around people that no matter what happens, if it's not what they want, they get angry?
Mm-hmm.
They just blow up. How many of those people are your closest friends? I would probably say 0. So we can have consistently good behaviors and we can have consistently poor behaviors. So because predictability is a byproduct of consistency, let's do this the other way. And I love the passages in Scripture that have to deal with faithfulness. Like Paul tells Timothy, work with, train, and be around faithful people. He doesn't say talented people. He doesn't say gifted people. He doesn't say rich people or poor people. Faithful people. Well, faithfulness is another word for consistency.
Right.
And here's what I know. When I find faithful people, when I find people who are consistent, I can build a leadership team with them because skill set can be learned. But faithfulness or consistency is part of our character.
Right.
And so if you want to end up having a ton of people trust you, your job and what you can do is be consistent in thought, in deed, in action, and in attitude. That's the trust continuum. You can work it backwards as I did, kind of reverse engineer it, or you can start at the very elementary level, which is consistency.
Yes.
Okay?
Can I ask you
Thoughts
something?
on that? Yeah, please.
I do have a thought that just popped into my brain. One thing that I do hear from people that have served in ministry is that they trust their pastor or leader, and all of those things you just talked about are in line. But what frustrates them is there's a lack of trust in that when they read a book or go to a conference or something, they look at what that pastor's doing and they come back and change everything that the team has worked so hard for. And that consistent changing, I find that to happen more and more often now than ever before. And I think as pastors and leaders, we have to be aware that that tears down trust quickly.
Yeah, so what you're mentioning, Pam, to get real practical, when we as leaders put a vision out there, it has to be a consistent vision.
Correct.
And I call what you're talking about zigzag ministry. Nobody likes zigzag ministry. Hey, we're going to do this. Now we're going to do that. It works great for sailing into the wind, but it's horrible for ministry. What is consistent? What are we striving for? And it doesn't mean that your vision can't adapt and change, but usually it morphs into a better version of itself. And that's understandable. But when it shifts from left to right to backwards to forwards to they're doing it this way and, all of that, which I know the allure to that. Listen, I've been there. I've done that. Fortunately, I've got the scar tissue, the T-shirt, the hat, and the pins on being an inconsistent leader. And it causes deep levels of frustration for people. So if we build trust, we have to be consistent. And then we become predictable. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with being predictable. And then people can put their confidence in us. And those that need to, of course, will bridge that gap and actually put their trust, their future, their well-being, their mind, their heart, and their soul in our bag, so to speak. And
Right.
that is the optimal level that we want to get to as leaders. Now, we can segment that out into finances, teaching, training, relationships, responses, all of that kind of a thing. And the order of it is, again, consistency leads to predictability. Predictability leads to confidence. And then I can't make somebody trust me because they have to decide, is this person worthy of my trust? And if they do, they'll take the necessary step or leap to mind that gap or cover that gap.
Right. And we also need to make sure in our own personal lives that we make promises that we know we can keep. When I was younger, I would say, yeah, I can do it. And there's no way I could have gotten all of those things done. So it would have been better for me to say, I can't do that right now. But make sure when you do give a promise, write it down if you need to, if you're forgetful, but still you should write it down and just make every commitment, every promise you make, keep that. And that's going to build that trust.
Yeah, and I'm even thinking of as we live our everyday lives, or maybe we're going on vacation or something like that, there are companies that are more trustworthy, different products, different services. One of the reasons that you're a repeat customer to wherever you go is either convenience or consistency.
True.
And what companies find in churches is that if we're consistent, we're going to get more than our fair share of the quote unquote market or people. And so trust actually starts with consistency, and that's really the only thing that I can control. I'll reverse it now. If I want to build trust or create trust, the only thing I can do is act in a consistent manner in my own self. And then it's up to you to determine, well, now can they predict my behavior? Is my behavior predictable enough that it leads them to have confidence in me? And so on. Now, why am I harping on this so much? It's very important for you and I to understand in ministry that if we're trying to get somebody to trust us, the likelihood is that they actually distrust us. But if we just act in a consistent manner, then trust will evolve or will become the byproduct of that over time. So trust takes time, especially for adults. It cannot happen overnight. And the reason for that is each and every one of us as adults have been burned.
Yes.
We've been burned emotionally, for sure. We've been lied to. Usually we've been cheated. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways. That builds up, and then we're a little bit skeptical. And probably rightfully so as adults. It's like we don't want to be naive to the way that the world works. But a degree of skepticism or cynicism in a person has everything to do with how likely they are or how willing they are to trust another person. And sometimes people are at the point where they just will not trust another person. And so I've had it happen in my ministry and in my life where there's a certain person, it would mean the world to me to gain their trust, and I've tried to get them to trust me, and it's eroded the relationship. That's where this comes from. What does that mean for you and I in ministry? We need to make sure that our yes is our yes and our no is a no. And if we really mean no, but we want to be nice to somebody, and we say, well, yeah, maybe, or yeah, I can do that, and then we put them off, and then finally say a no, can't build trust that way. Pam, you probably know this about me. I am very committed to being on time.
Yes.
And that has to do with this whole thing that we're talking about here. I don't want people to wait on me. And I want to establish this predictability and consistency factor in my life so that people know that, hey, if Chris Mavity says, then that's what's going to happen. Not because it's so important in any one meeting to be there exactly on time, but your life, my life, and the lives of many people are filled with meetings. Well, if you're consistently late, then I don't know if I can put confidence in you because I don't know when you're going to show up.
Right.
And so when it comes to trust, the small compiles into the big.
Sure does. Do you have an action item for us, Chris?
Well, yeah. Who, if anybody, are you trying to get to trust you? There's people I want to trust me. That's not what I'm talking about. I want my boss to trust me. I want my wife to trust me. I want my kids to trust me. I want my friends to trust me. That's not the question. The question is, who are you trying to get to trust you?
Right.
Somebody that maybe you're recruiting to ministry or whatever. Well, instead of getting them to trust you, how about if you just behave consistently with them and see what happens over time?
That's good.
And then evaluate your own consistency as it relates to the small things. I always like to start small. Why do I like to start small? Because I can win, and wins create energy.
Right.
And the more wins I have, the more energy I have. So I start small. Am I keeping my appointments on time? Did I show up on time for this?
Yes, you did.
Okay, great.
You're early usually.
So, well, early is on time for me. Evaluate your own consistency, and where you notice inconsistencies, just change. All you have to do is change. When you start with the little things, the big things will be taken care of because you'll develop patterns of faithfulness and consistency that then people can predict what's going on with you and they can put their confidence in you. Then, obviously, we've already said, but I'll say it again, it's up to them whether that confidence turns into trust. So,
right. Good stuff, Chris.
Yeah, we're going to continue to talk about trust, though. This was just the foundation. And so let me just repeat that if you can get this idea that it's your responsibility to create trust in others and just eradicate that from your mind, It's your responsibility to be consistent.
Right.
And then as you live a consistent life, then people will either trust you or they won't. You'll be able to tell. And then, of course, we all want to work with people that trust us. You'll be in a much better place to lead with confidence those that are already trusting you.
And we don't want to miss next week because it's part 2 of this great topic. And we're going to talk about trust, continuum, and where it all begins.
Okay.
I'm excited.
Well, obviously, we trust our sponsors.
Yes,
that's why
great
they're here.
Sponsors.
And we know that they can help you in a variety of ministry endeavors. You can see them there. Please, if you have a need in one of those areas, click on that, get connected, and get your ministry moving forward. But until next week, I hope you have a great week this week. God bless.